Welcome to the program today. Mano Gonzalez here in studio with special guest Tim Chaffey, and we're going to be discussing a topic that we like to discuss around here, and that is the Nephilim giants of Genesis chapter 6. And before we do, though, I want to remind you about our upcoming conference, February 9th through March 3rd. We are going to be in Orlando for our Orlando Prophecy Summit conference, where we're going to have 18 speakers, again, all your favorites, and some new ones, which is going to be pretty awesome. And we're going to be discussing all the latest prophetic events. As we know, it seems like every year is even more intense than the previous year. And I imagine until the Lord comes in the rapture, we're going to continue to say this. And so you want to continue to be updated. But if you go to the website, orlandoprophecysummit.com, you can get all the information there. We're going to have over 800 people. The hotel is wonderful. We were there last year. It's connected to the Florida Mall. There's a lot of things that you can do. But again, orlandoprophecysummit.com. But today, one of our topics here, again, is one of my favorites, is who are the giants? The Bible says in those days there were giants in Genesis chapter 6, and there's a lot of confusion as it relates to that. So we're going to talk to Tim. Welcome, Tim.
Mondo, thanks for having me on.
This is great, and for our audience, again, I will say this is the best book that I've seen on the topic. It's the most comprehensive.
Oh, thank you.
And but for our audience, kind of introduce yourself about what you do and where they can find more information about your ministry.
All right. Well, as you said, my name is Tim Chaffey. My day job, I'm the content manager for the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum in Northern Kentucky. So if your viewers haven't been there, you got to go. And if you haven't been there yet, we got to get you there and show you around. But so my responsibility is to write the exhibits that you read when you go through the Ark and through the museum. So I get to do a lot of research on various topics, and I love doing that. And then I have a ministry on the side called Risen Ministries, which is risenmin.com, so people can find out more about what I do individually there. And I do want to add that this particular topic, as a ministry, Answers in Genesis, doesn't take an official position. So if people are wondering, oh, is this their official view? No, we have an official non-position position. So what I'm going to be talking about today is my own view. It's the right view, but
yeah, I would agree. It is the right view, but there's wisdom in saying, you know what, this is keeping everybody in their own lane.
It's not worth splitting the church over. And some people have really strong feelings one way or the other, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to talk about it in a civil manner and just take a look at, what does the Bible say? So I appreciate you saying that was the best one you've read on the topic. Yeah. That was my goal. I wanted to make it lay level friendly. But I want it to be the most detailed Bible study on Genesis 6, 1 through 4 anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the approach that I have, is that in the sense of seeing this book was, wow, the book was comprehensive, it's definitive. If I was to go to one book on my shelf or to introduce the topic of Genesis 6 to somebody, this is the book that I would give them. And so it's nice to finally have an opportunity to interview you. And so let's step back for a moment as it relates to theology. Mm-hmm. I mean, our goal always is to talk about topics, again, with love and kindness. There's lots of disagreement, especially as it relates to Genesis 6. Why do you think there is so much controversy, or sometimes even acrimony, which that's not our hearts, about the topic of Genesis 6?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think some people are convinced that Jesus said that the fallen angel view, that angelic beings came down and sired children of women. They think that he ruled that out in Matthew 22:30 when he's talking about the woman who was
we'll
married
talk about it. Let's be a little thorough here. What does it say? And let's see if we can bring that up.
So that's when the Sadducees come and ask Jesus about, this woman's married to this man, and he dies. She married the brother, then the next brother. Who's she going to be married to in the resurrection? And he says that, you're mistaken. You don't know the scriptures or the power of God. He said, for in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels of God in heaven. And so they look at that passage and they think, Jesus said angels can't marry. Like, no, that's not what he said. He said the angels in heaven, the ones who are still there, don't marry. He never said anything about the ones who left their proper abode, as Jude talks about, and what their capabilities are. He just said the ones who are in heaven, the holy angels who have not rebelled, don't marry. Mm-hmm. So that's all he said. And yet in Luke's version of that, he actually, I think, gives a nod to the fallen angel view. That's where he talks about how, for in the resurrection, that they will be like the angels and are sons of God. So he uses the same terminology, which seems to imply that angels are called sons of God, which is what Genesis 6 verses 1 and 4 identifies, or 2 and 4 identifies them as.
I get criticism, but I like apologetics, defending the faith or even defending God, as we were talking, that oftentimes people will come, let's say to the book of Joshua, and God says, kill everything that moves. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a pretty serious command, as well as God flooded the world. Yep. So talk a little bit about how you address that here and how the idea helps us understand what God was after or what God was doing there, his purpose.
Yeah, so in theology we call it theodicy. You're dealing with the problem of evil or the problem of suffering and how good God, how does he relate to that? And what you have is God pronouncing judgment in both of these places, and it's very drastic, very severe. So why in Joshua did he say, kill them, men, women, children, animals in certain places, but not everywhere?
Not everywhere, yeah.
And then why the flood? Why is it so severe? What was taking place in the world? And in both those places, that's where we see this activity taking place. That's where Genesis 6 tells us, and remember, Moses is writing this after the flood, after the fact, and he's saying the Nephilim were on the earth in those days before the flood, and also afterward. And he says, whenever the sons of God did this activity. So that's how the giants were there before the flood and also after the flood. And it seems as if they were attempting to, at least before the flood, is what many people argue, is that they were attempting to corrupt this prophecy where God, from Genesis 3:15, where God said the seed of the woman is going to destroy the seed of the serpent and crush the serpent's head. And so if you're able to corrupt that line, how is the Messiah going to come into the world? How can he be the seed of the woman, or how can he actually be the son of God if he's actually a descendant of one of these other creatures? Yeah. And so to prevent that from taking over the pre-flood world, God takes Noah and his family and brings them safely through the flood. And then after the flood, you have this activity going again. And when the Israelites come back to the land after the Exodus, what do they find in the land? And what's in Hebron? Well, the giants are there. Yeah. In fact, they seem to be headquartered right there in Hebron. Yeah. And when God tells Joshua to take them out, men, women, and children, it's only in the places where the giants are. Yeah. So it seems as if it's a satanic attempt to thwart God's plan. And of course, God's plan can't be thwarted. He's all-powerful, all-knowing, and Satan can try desperately to do it, but he's not going to succeed. And this shows us that there's something extremely sinister going on, and to make sure that his promises came true, God was taking care of them.
It's interesting that right there in the beginning, you have a biological marker that the seed, this is a physical thing, that Jesus would be the physical seed of the woman, and then it sets the stage for the rest of what we're seeing in the next few chapters. But we're going to continue this topic in a moment, but we're going to take a little break here where you can see how to get our magazine, which again is a magazine that will keep you up to date on all the things that are happening. We have current events, we talk about biblical and other very interesting topics, so take a listen.
In case you haven't noticed, the whole world is spinning out of control, but we are not surprised because many of the things taking place were prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago. That's why we want to offer you a very special subscription to our magazine, The Prophecy Watcher, that will keep you on the cutting edge of Bible prophecy. Stay informed on prophetic world events. Follow the nuclear threats from Russia and Iran, China's march to world domination, the likelihood of another global pandemic, the rise of artificial intelligence and transhumanism, war in the Middle East, the UFO phenomenon, and the latest technology preparing the world for the mark of the beast. With your gift of $50 or more to support the worldwide outreach of Prophecy Watchers, you will receive 12 issues of the magazine in either print or digital format. You will also receive 10 bonus DVDs that feature in-depth teaching on the ancient book of Enoch, heaven and the New Jerusalem, the biblical case for the rapture, a look at how God put the gospel in the stars, what really happened at the Tower of Babel, and Ezekiel's prophecy on the battle of Gog and Magog. This special offer is available anywhere in the United States with free shipping included. Don't wait. Pick up the phone right now and call the toll-free number on your screen or visit us at prophecywatchers.tv. Stand with us today and help us take the message of Christ's soon return to the whole world.
Well, welcome back, and I am here with Tim Chaffey. And Tim, we're talking about really the progression of why Moses is writing in Genesis 3:15, the seed, and then in Genesis 6 we have all of a sudden Satan trying to interrupt that seed. Talk a little bit about Genesis 6:9, that Noah was perfect in his generations. That word there, perfect, it has some interesting connotations. Talk about that.
So it seems as if what the text is telling us is that Noah was not corrupted by what was going physically corrupted. Mm-hmm. And so not only was he a man who found grace in the eyes of the Lord, that he was a righteous man, but he's also somebody who was not corrupted by what's going on in his world at that day.
I think that's such a powerful testimony, because oftentimes for those that don't take, the more, I would say the more literal view, they're like, no, he was just, well, maybe tell us, what is their view, how that contrasts?
Yeah, so he was just the best person. He was a righteous man in a world gone crazy, which we would agree with. I mean, mm-hmm. The whole world was full of violence. The Bible tells us that every thought of man's heart was only evil continually. It's a pretty bad world, and people try to compare our world today to before the flood. Well, God tells Noah, I've seen that you alone are righteous before me. Can you imagine one believer compared to what we have today with millions? I don't think our world's quite as bad as what they were in. So I think they would just look at it from a perspective of, not so much a spiritual mentality, but just that people were really wicked. Noah was a good man or a righteous man. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think we can agree with that, but I think there's something on top of that as well, that he also was not corrupted.
Yeah. To use that very specific word, which again Moses uses later, mm-hmm. as it relates to a lamb being unblemished. To me, that's a physical blemish. It's really, to me, these are little nuggets that you bring out. Certainly in the book, it's amazing. Let's talk as well about there's several views here. Not everybody believes. What are the options here when you come on? Somebody's reading. Maybe you're reading Genesis chapter 6. And you come along and you're like, what in the world is this talking about?
Right.
What are some of the options that people have come to?
So the earliest view, as far as we know, is what we've been talking about. That's I'll call it the fallen angel view, or some people say the divine beings. That is that rebellious angels left heaven, they came down to earth, they saw that women were beautiful, they married them, they had children with them, and those offspring were the giants, the Nephilim. The word Nephilim just means giants. People try to go off into all sorts of other things.
Right.
It just means giants. And so that's the earliest view among ancient Jewish writers. That's the earliest view among in the early church fathers. And then about the end of the beginning of the second century, you have another view among the Jewish writers, and that's what I call the royalty view. This is where the sons of God who are taking the daughters of men, sons of God are viewed as being either judges or royalty, like the princes, and they would come along and take women into as many wives as they wanted. So the sin there would be polygamy. And so that's what they view it as that. The other view, which has been dominant ever since about the time of Augustine, late 4th century, early 5th century, up until about the last 100 years, the dominant view has been the Sethite view, and that is that in Genesis 5 you had the line from Adam to Noah through Adam's son Seth, and so they're saying this is a godly line of people, and what they were doing, those are the sons of God in that view, and they're marrying the daughters of men who are the women in the line of Cain. And they'll say, so there was a righteous marrying unrighteous, and God doesn't want that sort of relationship, and therefore this is why the world is going bad. I wonder why, if they were righteous, they were always marrying unrighteous, and I wonder why the daughters of men is in the line that never mentions daughters, but the other line mentions daughters over and over again. And so they're just grammatically and textually, that's not what the passage is saying. But those are the three main views that are out there.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of amazing that today, if a believer marries an unbeliever, you're not going to have some giant offspring.
And God's not going to send a flood to take care of it
exactly. Either. Talk about that in the sense of, okay, we know that in a lot of English translations, it'll say giant. The Septuagint, the Greek Septuagint uses that similar word. Mm-hmm. But is there any evidence that these guys were tall?
Well, that's what the text tells us. So in Genesis 6, it only tells us they were mighty men of old. So the Gibborim, they're mighty men of old, men of renown. And then in Deuteronomy, it's telling us about the Emim and the Zamzumim, and there are people as great and tall as the Anakim. Well, in Numbers, we read that the Anakim are of the Nephilim. And the spies go throughout the land, and they come back and they talk about how they felt like grasshoppers, compared to these people. So they're described as being tall, and some people say, well, the spies were just exaggerating, they were just lying. They may have been exaggerating, But the narrator himself, Moses, is telling us that they saw the Anakim in the land. And he names 3 of them in Numbers 13, Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, and they're in Hebron. So he actually names them. So they're not lying that the Nephilim are in the land. They might be exaggerating the height a little bit, but you have the passage with Og in Deuteronomy, where it says that his bedstead was an iron bedstead. It was about 13 and a half feet long. I don't know if he was that tall. If he was, he would be exactly twice my height at 6'9", which is hard to imagine somebody being that tall. But either way, he seems to be a pretty large guy. And he is of the Rephaim, which is another term for giants.
So we do have, again, like you mentioned, Deuteronomy, we do have evidence that even if the spies were exaggerating, you have the idea that they were just as tall as others. So you have Moses himself in other passages that are not Numbers, making correlations to their height.
Well, and you have in Joshua where it says they drove out the Anakim everywhere except for Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. Well, who do we read about from that area later on? Goliath is from there because he's a descendant of the Anakim. Yes, he's a Philistine nationally, but his genetics is through the Anakim, who are Nephilim.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that Joshua, he gives a summary in Joshua 11 that they fled west, and because I did some my archaeology in Gath, and so voila, it's the pentapolis of cities there, the Philistine cities, that Goliath shows up at the time of David, and he's right there from Gath as one of those cities that are mentioned.
And
so it's pretty
you
fascinating.
Find pottery shards with the name very similar to Goliath from that time period in Gath.
Yeah, so this is where you look at the history, you look at the Bible. And this is God, I'll say it this way, this is important because why? Well, God put it in the Bible right there, Genesis 3, Genesis 6, Genesis 14, the Rephaim are there, and then right there in the first 5 books, this is a very important part of the narrative, the foundational narrative for the rest of the Bible. So let's talk a little bit about, when we come to the New Testament, how does the New Testament writers bring that material in, and how do they use it? Do they believe it's there? And talk about that.
Yeah, we mentioned a little bit how in Luke's version of what's in Matthew 22, it seems as if Jesus is giving a nod to the fallen angel view. I wouldn't say that by itself you can prove it with that verse, not at all, but it's perfectly consistent with what I'm saying. But you look at 1 Peter, and it talks about how Jesus went, and so after he was crucified, and people will debate whether it was before his resurrection or after he rose, that he went and made proclamation to the spirits who were in prison. And, well, who are those spirits? They were disobedient in the days of Noah. It's not just wicked people throughout all time. It's some spirits that were disobedient in Noah's day that are being told the truth about something. Well, what is that? Well, if you read 2 Peter 2:4, it talks about these angels who sinned, who left heaven, and Jude 6, which is very much like 2 Peter 2, talks about the angels who left their proper abode. It even puts them in the same sort of context as what's going on at Sodom, where the men of Sodom are lusting after these angelic beings. And so it seems as if that is the back. In fact, we know that's the backdrop for Jude, because Jude quotes and alludes to the book of Enoch multiple times. Yeah. And the book of Enoch is all about these watchers, these angelic beings who, it's kind of like a retelling of Genesis 6 and expansion. It's not part of our Bible. I don't believe that it should be.
Yeah,
I know some people are really big on it, but and even, I'll just say it here because I hear people say all the time, oh, well, that's all, your view is all based on the book of Enoch. I don't think I mentioned the book of Enoch until like chapter 10, and it's just part of one of a whole bunch of books from that intertestamental period that hold the fallen angel view. So it's just, from my perspective, it's more of a historical importance, and then the fact that Jude uses it shows us that at least that's what he understood it to be and what his readers would have understood. So the New Testament writers are pretty clear on this one.
What I find interesting too is, again, we don't believe that Enoch is inspired scripture, but if you look at some of the language that both Peter and Jude use as it relates to this episode of these angels that sinned, and they talk about them being in chains, in darkness. Well, you're like, well, where did Peter and Jude get that? Enoch talks about chains and darkness, and so clearly it's undeniable that that was flavoring their inspired scripture that they were writing. Now, that doesn't mean Enoch is inspired, but no doubt it was shaping a lot of their viewpoints and to bring it into their theology at the time. So as we come to really how do you think that the Nephilim, this story, it interacts with the gospel and the mission of Jesus in the most broadest way, in the sense of a New Testament theological concept?
Well, we talked about before how it seems as if Satan is continually trying to thwart God's plan. And of course, he doesn't know everything. He can only know what's been revealed. So you see, after Genesis 3:15, this promise of the seed, it seems like he's trying to corrupt that. As soon as Abram gets promised this idea that the land is going to be theirs, but they got to go to another place first for 400 years, seems like he's trying to prevent that. And so all along, is every time that God is making these promises, you see Satan trying to make sure they don't come to pass. So when he says he's going to be the descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, what does he keep trying to do? Wipe out that line. And you see it get down to one person during, so with Jehoiada the priest rescuing little baby Joash. So he was the last one. Otherwise, that line ends through, and that kingly line to Jesus. So he's trying to stop that all along. And yet what we see is that no matter what Satan does, it's not enough. And ultimately, God sends his son into the world, which is that he said he's going to do. And that's the Lord Jesus Christ, who gave his life on the cross for you and me and for everyone. We've all rebelled against him. We need his forgiveness. And he died and rose and offers eternal life to those who believe in him. There are some people who think the Nephilim tie in much more directly than that. There are a lot of people, and even the early church fathers, a lot of them thought that the demons that Jesus was casting out during the New Testament times, that they were the spirits, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim who were killed in the flood. I'm not thoroughly convinced on that. I could be convinced on it, but I don't favor that view.
Scripturally, it's a little hard.
I can see where they get it from, but I'm not there. And I have a whole chapter just about that issue. But so they think it would be a lot more direct in how it relates to what Jesus is doing as part of just an attempt to thwart his work.
Well, we're going to take a little break here. If you want the definitive guide on the Nephilim, and also just so many background information of how we understand the Bible, as well as coming into the New Testament, and you're going to want to have Tim's book. So we're going to take a little break here.
Like many passages in the Bible, God doesn't always give us all the details, just enough for us to search out what's happening behind the scenes, the backstory, if you will. There's no better example of this than the controversial account we read about in Genesis 6. If we take the scripture literally, we read about an encounter between a group of angels who have left their heavenly home and the women of earth, whom they take as wives. According to scripture, these fallen angels found the women of earth attractive, and together they created a hybrid race that threatened the existence of life on earth. It doesn't take long to connect the dots. Ultimately, this was part of an ancient battle between Jesus and Lucifer. Gary Stearman calls it the Seed War. And what do we see happening in our world today? Gender confusion, DNA mapping, genetic manipulations, transhumanism, all designed for one purpose: to destroy the one thing God holds most precious, the lives of men and women, a special, one-of-a-kind creation made in his image. Tim's new book, Fallen, may be the most comprehensive book ever written on the subject. We're making it available for your gift of $25 or more, with shipping included anywhere in the USA. And as always, it comes with a special DVD bonus on the subject, Gary Stearman's Footprints of the Nephilim, an hour-long live presentation that sheds light on a subject you've likely never heard about in church. Just call the 800 number you see on your screen or visit our bookstore at prophecywatchers.com. For our international friends, please note that additional shipping fees will apply and all payments must be made in US dollars. If you find this subject as fascinating as we do, we created the Genesis 6 Enoch package. It includes Tim's new book, Fallen, along with a hardback collector's edition of the apocryphal book of Enoch. We've also added 4 bonus DVDs, Gary's Footprints of the Nephilim and It's All About the Seed, along with a 2-hour interview on the Book of Enoch with prophecy expert Ken Johnson. Tim's new book, The Enoch Book, and all 4 DVDs, a $100 value, are available for your gift of $65 or more to help support our television ministry. We believe the return of the Lord Jesus is very close. Scripture compares the events taking place in the days of Noah to events that will be taking place at the time of Christ's return. What do we see happening today? Transhumanism, super soldiers, artificial intelligence. In the words of Gary Stearman, folks, we're there. Thanks for watching today, and may God bless you.
Well, welcome back, and I really do hope you get Tim's book. Again, it has kind of a pride of place on my bookshelf, and I really mean that. And so, we've talked about a variety of things there. So in the last couple minutes here, you're the author. You're the one that's addressing. Kind of give us what you think are some other important items that you wanted to address in the book.
Yeah, well, there's so many offshoots of this, so many areas that people get into. I've been asked so many questions about, are there female giants? And the Bible never names any of them, but it does talk about entire clans of giants. So I would assume that in order to keep that clan going, the fact that, Goliath is descended from giants, and you probably have female giants. That seems to be the assumption. Plus, throughout these mythologies in the world, you have similarities. And I think what's happening is in many cases, the Bible is giving us the true account. These other ones are echoes of that. And of course, there's distortions and everything. You have that. Some people say, well, why aren't there Nephilim today? And well, why would they be needed today? Back then, to win a battle, you got to be the biggest and the strongest, and they were. But now, you don't need that.
From Satan's perspective, he wouldn't need that to happen today.
Right, because you can launch a cruise missile from thousands of miles away and take care of them. So you don't need that anymore today. But it's also possible that the angels who did that, who are held in chains, can no longer do that, because not every angel has the same ability. So those fallen angels, maybe none of them are around that can still perform that task. But the other thing I would say, there's so much in the Bible about this. I used to think it was confined to Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and Numbers 13. And then when I did my THM thesis, I realized it is all throughout the Bible. And when you start to understand this and what's really going on in this spiritual battle that's taking place, and how Satan is continually trying to thwart God's plan, the Old Testament and the New Testament, but especially the Old, comes alive like never before, and you'll see it throughout.
Yeah, Tim, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I mean, this has been awesome, and I think the way that Tim just said it is exactly the case. And if you want to get to the background and you want to get to some of the deeper layers of Scripture, this isn't we're not spiritualizing anything here. But the Bible comes alive when you begin to understand some of the details that God has put in the Scripture, as well as the correlations to the New Testament. And that's why here at Prophecy Watchers, we spend so much time on this, because we want to go deep. That's why we think it's important. That's why Tim is here, and we talk about this topic. But appreciate you watching this week. As always, will you continue to pray for us? We cannot do what we do, most specifically without your prayers. The battle is real. Ephesians 6:12 says very clearly that we're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against all these other spiritual entities that want to come and interfere and to thwart as we seek to present the gospel of Jesus Christ, which salvation is found only in Him. So appreciate you watching this week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter.